21st chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
When Jesus entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came to him as he was teaching and said, "By what authority are you doing these things, and who gave you this authority?" Jesus said to them, "I will also ask you one question. If you tell me the answer, then I will also tell you by what authority I do these things. Did the baptism of John come from heaven, or was it of human origin?" And they argued with one another. "If we say from heaven, he will say to us, 'Why then did you not believe him?' But if we say of human origin, we are afraid of the crowd, for all regard John as a prophet." So they answered Jesus, "We do not know." And he said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things." What do you think? A man had 2 sons. He went to the first and said, "Son, go and work in the vineyard today." He answered, "I will not." But later he changed his mind and went. The father went to the second and said the same. And he answered, "I go, sir." But he did not go. Which of the 2 did the will of his father? They said the first. Jesus said to them, "Truly I tell you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes are going into the kingdom of God ahead of you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him. And even after you saw it, you did not change your minds and believe him." The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
As an adult, one of the 2 brothers would think back to his days at confirmation camp back in the 1970s, and especially remember the pastor who was there for camp all week long. Occasionally, the pastor would start singing a song that he seemed to have in his head and could not let go of, although everybody asked him to. On the way to campfires, on the way to the dining hall, on the way to the dorms, and in the shower, he would sing the same thing and just the first verse. "Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way." By the end of the week, we could all recite the entire song from memory, but especially that first verse. And as an adult, one of the brothers remembered it vividly. And for a reason. Because he and his brother got into a fight on Facebook. It was about politics. One of the brothers said something on Facebook, and the other brother came back, not just with a contradiction, but with insults. "You're stupid. You're wrong. You're ignorant. What's wrong with you?" Anybody with any sense would believe the same way I do. The other brother tried reconciliation in a couple of ways, and then a silence descended on their relationship that it didn't look like would turn into conversation again anytime soon. And so the adult brother bore this heavy cross. And ruefully he would think back to his confirmation camp days and say through gritted teeth this time, "Oh Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way." Filled with this bitterness and maybe some questions about relationships and God, what was forgivable and what wasn't? The adult brother read Matthew 21. Or maybe you heard it in church. It seemed to be about what he was troubled by, about broken relationships because of politics and lack of communication. Who has power and who doesn't? That seemed to be exactly what Matthew 21 was about, and the adult brother could relate. He heard the chief priests and the scribes come to Jesus and try to exert their power over him, to get him to stop teaching so that they wouldn't get into trouble with their Roman superiors or with the people outside. Jesus was in the temple teaching, and that was where they were supposed to have control. I guess in a way it was kind of their Facebook page. And they said, "By what authority are you doing these things?" Which meant, "We've got the power, buddy, so you shut up." And Jesus said, "I'll answer your question if you answer one of mine. It's about John the Baptist." And I think he kind of knew what could happen, because the chief priests and the scribes got together and they started whispering with each other. What are we going to do? This is a loaded question, and it threatens our power. If we say that John was this, then we'll get in trouble with the Romans. And if we say that John was that, we'll get in trouble with the people. Either way, our power will be diminished, and we cannot have that. So they turned back to Jesus and said, "We do not know." And Jesus said, "If that's the way you're going to be, then I don't think we're going to be talking for a while." And the adult brother was noticing in the gospel how Jesus didn't get into power struggles and political conversations. His aim seemed to be higher and lower at the same time. Lower because he wanted active relationships with just about everybody, and higher because he wanted his relationship with God to be intact. So he was continually brushing away entanglements that would get him into power struggles and discussions about politics. He didn't want to be limited that way. And neither did the older brother. Jesus continued his speaking and said something about two brothers. And boy, did that ring a bell with the adult brother. Two brothers? Tell me more. One promised to go into the field but didn't. And the other one didn't promise to go into the field. Not me, I'm not doing it. And then later he changed his mind and did. And we know that that's supposed to be about the chief priests who said that they would follow God but never did, and the people in the street who didn't follow God and said they wouldn't, but changed their minds. And look how fluid relationships can be. And people can change their minds and grow spiritually, can't they? But what the adult brother was also hearing was that Jesus was interested in relationships between brothers. And that's what excited him about what Jesus was doing. The adult brother thought about two things that he knew a lot about. One was the Bible. And when he thought about the Bible, he thought about all the sets of brothers leading up to Jesus. From Adam and Eve on, Cain and Abel, one killed the other, two brothers. Jacob and Esau, one tricked and cheated the other, two brothers. And more sets of brothers, all the way up to the two brothers in Jesus' parable today. And what was that all about? Why was Jesus so concerned with brothers? Maybe because a great relationship between two brothers can foul so easily when they get caught up in who has the most power. And isn't it hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way? So, the adult brother also thought about something else that he knew very well. He thought about music. And he thought about two brothers in music. And those two brothers were George and Ira Gershwin. You know the Gershwins and all the popular songs that they wrote back in the 1920s and 30s. George would spin out a brilliant tune overnight, and then Ira would work for weeks trying to fit the correct lyrics to that tune. And when he did, those lyrics could almost stand alone as poetry. The two brothers were brilliant and worked together very well, but they were different. In the early 1930s, when George and Ira had a couple of shows running on Broadway at the same time, and records selling everywhere, and people singing their songs on the radio with them, George decided to become a painter. And he turned out to be a pretty good one. He painted a self-portrait. He called it Myself. It was of George and his elegant frame in white tying tails and a top hat, standing in front of a mirror, beholding himself. Look at me. It's hard to be humble. And Ira took a look at it, and he decided that the lyrics to that song ought to be a little bit different. So he also took up painting. When he was done with his self-portrait, he called it My Body. And it was him standing in front of a mirror in his boxer shorts and his socks and his athletic t-shirt. All shortness and stubbiness, rolls and fat and imperfections for all the world to see. And him looking at himself, my body. What he was trying to do was tell George something about being humble and about how humility is necessary in all relationships, maybe between brothers, certainly between us and others, and always between us and God. Now, if you can't paint, there's still a way to have that self-portrait for yourself. It's called the Brief Order for Confession and Forgiveness, in which we take up our spiritual paintbrush and say, we're sorry, God, for the things that we've done and the things that we've left undone. It's hard to be humble because we're not perfect in any way. But we need you to forgive us. And we need you to teach us again how to forgive others.